All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another exciting edition of Two Men in Black and White, an honest conversation. 2 and 2 is 5. The sun rises in the west and sets in the east, and Republicans are not going to take away Medicaid benefits. How dumb are we as the American people? That's just what I'd like to know. Can you do simple math? And black folks, you better wake up, because the wake-up call is coming if this bill goes through. We talked about this yesterday. 85% of the black population, or take a few in the U.S., will be impacted by these Medicaid cuts. All right, I'm joined by my partner, Brock Ganeles, from the beautiful Hudson Valley in upstate New York. He joins us now with a chip on his shoulder as well. Brock, I'm pissed off. Republicans keep lying, not about just the big, ugly-ass bill, but also about their strikes in Israel, about everything they open their mouth about. They lie. And we as the American people sit here and we keep taking it. I just don't understand why. Please tell me why if you've got some insight.
It just amazes me that the Republicans keep trying to say that they're not cutting Medicaid when it's exactly in the bill, and it's just plain and simple, you're cutting Medicaid. It's interesting. Some people got in the comments from yesterday's podcast saying, well, it's going to push more and more people to emergency rooms. But then I'm like, wait a second. Maybe if you're lucky, if your rural hospital hasn't shut down, the nearest emergency room may be like 3-4 hours away. Like, that might not even be an option for many Americans. But it's just amazing how these things roll along. Project 2025 was written down. The Republicans talked about this in the fall ahead of the election. So none of this is a surprise. The only surprise is that the MAGA world just feels like they can just absolutely bullshit people directly, day in and day out, and get away with it. And sadly, so far they have, right? We're in late June, and they've just lied their way all the way through. And just to correct, you mentioned Israel. There was the strikes in Iran, of course, you're talking about.
I'm sorry about
but
that.
The fact is that Trump, then Hegseth, right? They're screaming at the press for reporting that it appears as though our own intelligence has come to the conclusion that although it was a well-executed strike by our military, they hit the targets they were given, that perhaps those targets didn't have the uranium that will be enriching the bombs that we were trying to dismantle. That maybe this was a miss. It appears to be a miss. And Trump's going rip shit, screaming at everybody that we're wrong, but he has no idea because they're all saying, well, you can't look at the intelligence. So therefore, as usual, he's trying to tell us the only person you can believe is just his gut feel that, that we hit the targets and wiped it out.
And it's just ridiculous, right? Because they only want you to believe what the media says when it's to their benefit, right? Never if it appears to be objective or fact-based, right? They only want the media to play for their team. And I don't understand why we as a people, we as a nation, have not seen through this nonsense yet. I don't get it for the life of me. I understand why the big media companies want to play, the game with Trump. They got these mergers they got to get through. The landscape, for the media, business is changing. Streaming is impacting all the traditional broadcast stations because, you know what? They got caught behind the 8 ball with their pants down because they had no idea this stuff was going to catch on. They didn't think young people were going to give up the remote control, and that's what they did. They traded in the remote, for their phones and their iPads. So now they're caught trying to catch up, and they got to play the game with Trump in order to do that.
Yeah, to hold any ratings, right? Otherwise, the ratings are at zero, right? They need his bombast and his bullshit because he thinks that gets eyeballs because every day is a conflict, and they think that hate drives views, right?
Right.
So they fuel the anger and the crazy and hoping we'll tune in for the day. It's like Real Housewives episode every day, right? We're flipping over tables.
And in the meantime, it's costing people their lives. I mean, we're seeing the division play out each and every day. Right? We're seeing the nonsense on the streets. We're seeing masked men on the streets of America snatch people off the street. What? Snatch them from work. which is the insane part to me, right? How long do you think this guy got here yesterday and got this job? Like, how long do you think he's been here? You don't think he's got a home? You know, they're snatching people out of courtrooms, hiding in the weeds over there behind the courthouse in Los Angeles. What is your fucking problem that you can't understand? You know what I mean? Like, everybody is welcome here, right? We are the folks that have impeded on someone else's land. Let's not even get into that. As we've said before, by the way, Brock, we're gonna have to study up and do a whole Native American episode, right? Because they are far left out of the conversation so often that, they don't even get a whisper, right? And people will write them off and say, oh, they got casinos. They got casinos. Really? You know what the alcoholism population is? The numbers of alcoholics on Indian reservations is? It's insane. So, we need to do better. But, we need to be able to see through the headsets, mini mics, right? And Donald Trump. How are you blaming the media? Because you signaled your attack on Iran. You think Iran's been playing this game a lot longer than you have, Trumpster. Right? They're a lot better at terrorism and war games than you are. You're new to this, okay? You just stopped playing with army men and got a real army a few years ago with Trump 1.0. You don't know how the army works. You don't know what intelligence is. He wouldn't know intelligence if it bit him in the ass. And that's the problem. Tulsi Gabbard doesn't know what it is. Tulsi Gabbard is trying to make friends. So they'll tell her what intelligence actually looks like, right? Hegseth. I mean, how do we know if he's even sober enough to decipher any intelligence or decipher what in fact happened during the strikes? We can't trust these people. They're not any good at what they do. And that's my issue. The first thing they do is blame somebody else. Blame Biden, right? Blame Kamala, right? All the bad stuff belongs to Kamala and Biden. All the good stuff, that's Trump's. Right? And they come out and say this stuff like nobody's listening. And we as the American people are not listening. But we may be hearing it. It's just not registering. Because if it was, we'd have been in Washington, D.C. by now.
Now, look, once we decide to do the airstrikes, I wanted them to be successful, right? Like, hey, if we're going to have take the heat and the mishigas of doing this and the risk, let's at least take out the nuclear capability. So it looks like, but it's still early, right? We just don't know. Trump can't live with the fact that he doesn't know. We don't know for sure. We're living in uncertainty on what the outcome was of these bombings. Early intelligence seems to belie that they didn't work. But okay, we don't have to come to a conclusion on that yet. So stop yelling at the press. Stop bullshitting us. I'm tired of people like Hegseth going out and doing press conferences like this morning, showing all this, quote, rage, which to me is manufactured anger because he's putting on a performance for Donald Trump. The rest of us are just along for the ride. He just wants to keep his job, and he knows. So when the media then says, "Oh, an angry Pete Hegseth," well, it's a fake anger. He's generating. It's just the game. It's a performance, right? Afterwards, they're just rating the performance, not like the content. So that's all. That stuff is meaningless and noise, and we have to just filter it out and move on to the things of substance, which gets us back to Medicaid and healthcare in America, and the fact that a decision is being made by the leaders of this country to cut 16 million people or more, probably more when the dust settles, off of Medicaid and other access to healthcare, so that more dollars can flow to the wealthiest Americans. And it's as simple as that. And yet, Mike Johnson and Trump and others and Lindsey Graham's world, they'll just come out and lie to us and say that's not what's happening.
Right.
But a lot of people are going to die. Now, the one interesting thing is the polls, for whatever they're worth, particularly now when nothing can be done really about anything until we hit the streets, I'll get to in a second, is the polls are showing that Americans, once they learn of these cuts, are entirely of 25 points plus against this bill, once they understand what's in it. And also Americans, the needle's moved on other polls, that Americans are now to the positive on believing that immigrants that are here working but not documented should have at least a path to residency and or citizenship. not deportation, and it's almost 2-1. So the needle's moved on sentiment when people are polled and discussed and, sort of asked the question.
Right.
So I guess in one respect, it seems like that people are waking up to what's going on around them, but we're still not doing it. But we're still not doing anything.
No. And that's the problem. Neighbors are not talking to neighbors because we don't know our neighbors anymore because of people like Donald Trump, the Steve Bannons of the world, all the MAGA misfits basically have made us afraid to get out of our shells and our silos and make friends with others, right? Because if we knew others, we would, even more of us would have been in the streets about what's happening to our Latino friends and family members. But the other thing that I wanted to say is when where is there is no humanity in this government, no compassion, no concern about the things that are actually going to make our lives better. I thought that was what the government was for, right? I always thought the government should be a break-even type of deal. Shouldn't be profiting off of it, but shouldn't be losing money either. But it's hard to, actually it's hard to get there. Right, just because of the way things shape out, right? But we could get there if billionaires paid their fair share. But we don't want to do that. We don't want to, we don't want to impose Jeff Bezos' $20 million wedding this weekend. Of course, we wouldn't want to do that. If he had to spend $15 million on his wedding, it wouldn't be nearly as nice. But because our system has become so politically fiery and so many people can't tell what's what, people have decided, you know what? I'll just go with the last thing I heard. I'll go with the disinformation, or I will pick a side and stay there. I remember when people used to actually say, hey, wait till you hear the other side. Not anymore. Nobody wants to hear the other side. So when you look at a big, beautiful bill, which is the biggest bunch of horse shit we ever heard, is the part about Donald Trump not being able to be found in contempt of court still in there, or is it out? Like, what's in this bill that Americans really need to know about? Because, the fact that many folks don't know about the Medicaid cuts means that, your household might pick up 3 or 4 people, right? Because otherwise people are going to be on the street, right? So, how do we get Americans to understand and we've been saying this about Trump, but we need to get them to understand the urgency and the existential threat that this bill proposed could mean for their lives, especially in rural and urban centers.
Yeah, has rural white America figured this out yet?
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, I don't think so, but I don't know. I'm not out there, right? I don't know. Maybe they're just not getting a voice, right? So you're not hearing about it. Yeah, and it's amazing. That's what's going on nationally. And just to bring it back to like my little corner of the world, right? Because I feel like this New York City mayor situation has really become a microcosm of a lot of the debates that have gone on in the country. And because there was an election, right, people think about policies maybe when there's an actual election. And there's going to be a question that I'm going to ask you to dig in on and come back to us on it, because I want you to get back out into your black crew, especially those living in New York City, because it looks like Cuomo got more votes from black New Yorkers than Mamdani got.
Right.
And I wonder if that was blacks being practical and saying Cuomo's a known quantity, and if he wins this, he'll win the election, and at least he's just a solid old school Democrat, and he'll be okay for us.
Right.
Because the policies now, of course, the Democrat establishment is scared shitless because the Ken Martins of the world, Slotkins, Schumer types, Kristen Gillibrand, who won't even endorse this guy, even though he's won the Democratic primary now. Now she says she doesn't endorse candidates, even though she has in the past, right? Are so afraid of this guy because he's got that Democratic socialist label. And whoa, his ideas are too far out there. But Mark, I'm just going to give you a couple of the policies that this guy has pushed for in New York. Number 1, caps on rent. Number 2, 100,000 affordable housing units in New York City. The joke back in New York is, remember that guy from 10 years ago who said the rent's damn too high? He threw a ring for the mayor, and that was his one policy, and he went around the city. I think he was homeless, and he said the rent damn too high. People were like, wow, he's vindicated. The rent's too damn high.
Right.
This guy is going to make the buses free. He's also going to try to come up with a program to get them to move faster because, you only go like one fucking block at a time. It takes you forever to get around in the bus, right? He has an idea for maybe like some city-owned food emporiums that are like wholesalers and in some, whatever, triple Lundy way of trying to keep, grocery prices down. But he's going to try something. Yeah, it sounds socialist, but like these are the policies. And when you hear those things, it's like, well, they seem to be addressing what were the biggest issues for voters in November, which was the price of rent and the price of like groceries, right? Those kitchen table, those fucking kitchen table issues that supposedly everyone votes on. Now, maybe he's trying a couple things that are new and untested, and you know what? Some of them might fail. But it's for people in New York where affordability is the number one concern. Having someone say, hey, I'm going to try a few things. Like,
that works.
It works.
That works.
So many people are feeling like they're getting priced out of the city or their quality of life is in decline because so much of their income is being chewed up by their rent that they don't have money to do anything else.
Well, Brock, remember when Amazon wanted to come to New York City and bring their headquarters there? Remember, people were up in arms because they wanted to move to Long Island City. And what was going to happen to the price of housing when those guys came with their high 6- and 7-figure salaries? Right? Prices were going to go through the roof. They said, Amazon, we don't need any more, price hikes when it comes to housing. You can take that stuff somewhere else. And they ended up having to. But it's because, like, everybody doesn't earn enough money to live on Park Avenue. It just don't. I mean, have you seen the cost of living in Manhattan? I mean, it is absurd. I don't know how.
And now it's spread out to Brooklyn and Queens. Like it's spread out, and it's interesting because a lot of the moneyed interests who are worried about the socialists are now like talking Eric Adams and lining up and like so there's going to be like a lot of money thrown at competitors to this Mamdani when he gets to the general election. It's just going to be interesting to watch. But from a pure ideas point of view, and maybe I'm a progressive, okay, whatever that term means, because I look at these ideas and goes, well, this shit makes perfect sense to me. Like, this isn't like ruining New York City. This is actually, young people can't afford to live in New York City anymore. Well, that hurts the vibrancy of the city. So like, I mean, every city has America has an affordability crisis, and this one guy in this one city, right, is just coming up with some ideas that he's going to try because what we've tried in the past hasn't been working. And why is this painted as some radical assault on the American way of life? Like, whose life's getting assaulted here?
Exactly. So let me understand this. We'd much rather have a MAGA contingent or MAGA light with Eric Adams, who is in Trump's pocket because he kept him out of jail, than this man with common sense solution. We heard a lot about common sense solutions, right? I'm going to help you buy your first house. They're eating the cats and the dogs. People voted for they're eating the cats and the dogs, right? So here, more common sense solutions. Bring the cost of food down, bring the cost of transportation down, bring the cost of housing down. Nah, let's get with a MAGA light, Eric Adams, or even a MAGA full blown.
Yeah, Republican
side of the line.
I don't even know who that candidate is, but you know what his policies are going to be.
Absolutely.
The other interesting part about this Muslim American winning the primary is not only is it shaking up the Democratic establishment, right? Because he's coming with these, quote, radical ideas. But of course, it's bringing out the fucking racism of MAGA. So you have the congressman from Tennessee, Engels, I think his name is, wrote a letter to Pam Bondi saying that Donald Trump should revoke the citizenship of Mamdani. Revoke it and kick him out of the country. That instead of running a candidate against him that could win in New York, that's the MAGA. But that's a little bit scary because these ICE deportations are starting to extend out to more and more, like, in essence, nationalities. There's an Iranian American woman got snatched in Louisiana today, and now, so there's just more. A Canadian guy died in custody today in Florida, 49-year-old guy. We don't even know those circumstances, but we know these facilities are shit shows, right?
Right.
People on the
Right.
floor, food and water. I mean, if you're not in like perfect health, you can see things going south pretty quickly. But anyway, it triggered this the racism in MAGA, and like just right off the bat, like they basically, want this guy dead, deported or dead.
Right. And oh, by the way, construction is underway in the Everglades on that alligator Alcatraz. Expected to house 5,000 migrants. You think that's going to be comfortable?
Who are the employees that are building these facilities? Because from what I've
I
seen,
don't
the
know.
only employees,
I don't
right?
know.
Because the employees getting rated on every other construction site are the
Right.
actual
Who's building this stuff?
immigrants, right? So,
Yeah.
like, are
Who's
the white
building this
guys
stuff?
lined up to do this work out in the 120 degrees in the Everglades with the alligators fucking chomping at their heels?
I can't imagine so.
Yeah, I want to see the staffing for this one.
Right. Right. I see a bunch of white guys out there, but they're in charge.
Yeah, they're in charge. I think they're gonna
Yeah,
have
they're
they're gonna
running the joint.
snatch first, have them build the own facility, and then
Right.
jail them in it.
And then house them. Right.
That's probably the DeSantis plan.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it makes no sense. I mean, again, cruelty for the sake of cruelty. Yeah, let them run through into the Everglades where they've got an out of control python problem down there, right? Then you got the alligators. I mean, Alligator Alley is just notorious. Like, it's always scared me to have to drive across there, because God forbid you break down, you don't want to be on the side of the road on Alligator Alley. But now you want to house people there who haven't even broken the law, right? In that kind of heat and in that kind of natural element where deadly animals roam. I mean, it's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous until one of those snakes comes out from one of those cars, under one of those detention facility cars, and a python wraps somebody up for lunch. But nonetheless, I mean, it is absolutely absurd. They're still not grabbing any MS-13 members. Haven't seen any tattoos, haven't seen any weaponry, haven't seen any drugs, haven't seen any rapists. All the worst that they've sent over here have still, not been caught. Have they all absconded? I mean, did they all make a clean getaway? Did they all hit the tunnels at the border while we were building the wall? I mean, where are they? Where is the 3,000 a day coming from, besides people at work and people at school, people in the carpool line? Where are you grabbing these migrants from?
People in the courtrooms going
People in
through the
courtrooms.
process the right way as they were told to do it. They're the easiest ones to
Exactly.
snatch because they're being compliant and actually playing by the rules. I mean,
Right.
they're snatching them off the farms. They're snatching them off of the work sites, particularly for construction. Yeah, they're snatching workers. So we're just recognizing that these people are here to work and they're contributing to the economy because, of course, ICE knows where to find them on the job site, busting their
Right.
asses, trying to make a
Right.
few dollars, right? Just trying to get by, trying to have a slightly better life than the one they had before because there's more opportunity here than there is in their home countries. And
Right.
and they're fueling the most powerful economy in the world. And we decided we don't want them,
don't
but
wanna compete.
we can't replace that labor. Yeah. A side note, our trade imbalance increased in the month of May. So the tariffs actually had a negative impact on the trade balance. Right.
Wow.
The whole point was we were going to export more than we imported, and because we're getting screwed by everybody.
Right.
And fact is, we're still importing all this shit.
Yeah.
And people are just taking less of our exports. So America,
Yeah.
once again, in decline on another metric, right? I mean, it's
And
just,
we're paying more.
and we're paying more for everything. So declining quality of life, declining life expectancy, right? America is in such significant decline. And just to stay on the tariffs for a second, because, it's so easy to forget old topics nobody's blinked, right? The world has just, no
Moved
one's
on
come to
without
the
us.
table. No deals, right? They just cut deals with each other. They're just
Right.
figuring how to circumvent around America as much as possible where they can.
Yeah.
And no one really came begging, right, for a sweetheart deal. China stared us down and so where are we in the whole tariff thing, right? You never even hear about it anymore. No
No.
negotiations, no deals get cut. It's like,
No. And it's bad. It's bad for America, and it's not good news for Trump. So they don't want to report it. So that's probably why we're not seeing it. And Brock, I read the other day the average price for a new car in America, $50 large. $50,000, not 50,000 rupees, not 50,000 Balboas, 50,000 American dollars. Who the hell has 50K for a new ride? What do you put down 20% on that? And what's your payment? What, $700-800? I mean, good Lord. Or 84 months, right? Like how much money the car company's gonna make off this thing? The money, 84 months, right? I mean, I thought 60 months was crazy. All right, people are gonna be going 72, 84 months like it's nothing now, and the banks are loving it. So it's always about the money, right? They're going to turn it around and make more money, and they're going to sell you a payment when you come in there into the car dealership now. Where do you need to be? Huh? Let's see what we can do to get you in this vehicle, right? And they'll be back to get it in 7 months when you can't make that plus your rent plus groceries. You'll be living in the dark. Watching TV on your phone in your car. 9 o'clock Thursday night trying to watch a game on Amazon Prime. It's insane. It's insanity, man. But you're right. We are on a steep hill headed downward fast.
Yeah, and I mean that car statistic just gets back to that affordability issue, which is really the number one, right? Like that was the issue of the election, right? It was a gotcha. We got you on egg prices, right? Basically, the entire white supremacy takeover was executed on the price of fucking eggs. And we gave up like all our freedoms and our entire stature in the world for the fallacy that egg prices were going to come down, which was, of course, another lie, which is where we started the discussion, right? It was just another lie. And the price of gas, they haven't come down. But Trump goes out and tells the world that they've gone down and just cites fake statistics and fake gas prices that no one's getting anywhere, right? The $1.98, the $1.98 gas that no one has a photo of at any pump anywhere in America. But he literally goes out in front and it becomes a headline news, right? Like that's the story because Trump says gas is down. Don't believe your credit card bill. Don't believe that you could only fill your tank to a quarter because it's the only money you had in your bank accounts. I mean, this is here we are, so it just gets us back to, I did have a conversation, we're coming to the end, so I'm going to be quick. I had a conversation with a friend today that I want to maybe refer to a little bit, in the next couple of days. Okay. But he did, I said, yeah, I'm militant. I told him, yeah, I'm militant. Like, he told me, calm down, think about other things. You can't let this bother you all day, every day. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm sorry. That's not how I'm wired. It fucking bothers me all day, every day. So like, yeah, no, I'm not letting this go. There's no relaxing. I don't have downtime where this is not something that I feel like there needs to be, in essence, a revolution in America.
Right.
Like we have to unseat Donald Trump from the presidency. And even if that means getting a MAGA lighter guy for a few more years, we can't have a lunatic psychopath. And he's like, well, how could that happen? Oh, come on, be realistic. That could never happen. It's like, how could that even happen? I say, you know how it could happen? I said, it could happen if 5-10 million people go to Washington, D.C. and basically shut down society, business, and the government. And no one goes home. And it forces Trump to call in the military. And when he calls in the military, we can only hope that they put down their arms because they will not shoot hundreds of thousands of their fellow citizens. And the day that they put down their weapons and don't fire at their fellow citizens, Trump has lost his power as president because he can no longer be commander-in-chief because the troops have abdicated their responsibilities. They have refused his order. He has lost his power. He's done in that moment. And he was like, and it was interesting. My friend was like, shit, think that could really happen? And then he's like, I gotta go to a meeting, but I gotta call you back on this. And I was like, yeah, right, it could fucking happen. I'm like, but it also could get really ugly because maybe they would gun down a ton of people.
Maybe we get a Kent State type of thing
this ain't risk-free.
Right.
Because he's like, they would never lay down their weapons. I'm like, well, how many people would they shoot?
Right.
Would they kill 5-10 million people? Would that be the DC massacre, all in the name of Donald Trump? So it's scary and it's crazy. It sounds crazy because it's hard to even comprehend in this country that may be what we have to do. And that might be the risk that we have to take.
Hello.
But I'm like, How are we doing 3.5 more years of this? There's no fucking way this country, like, we survived 3.5 more years of this psychopath in mental decline. So, like, I'll leave it there and I'll turn it back to you to wrap up. But I guess those are the conversations I'm now having with my white friends.
Yeah, and we need to
You know what? We didn't talk about the NBA draft. Not
at all.
And then we would have talked 3 years ago in the boring Biden Sleepy Joe era. We would have talked 30 minutes about the NBA draft.
Right.
And maybe 2 minutes about politics and 3
Exactly. Yeah, and
No.
how funny those 5 first-round picks for the Brooklyn Nets were. I mean, 5 picks, and the NBA executives are laughing at them. Well, a quick hit, real quick, before we go. Usher performing at Bezos' wedding. I'm going to have to take some of his music and throw it out my car window. All right, Ursha. If I see him in Atlanta, Brock, I just want to let you know I'm going to have a sternly worded letter ready to hand to him.
How much of the 20 million is going to Usher? Is he getting 500 for that? A million?
Nah, he's getting $1 million or $2 million. Yeah, he's got to travel, got to bring the band, the dancers.
And he might as well
Probably
price
getting
it up.
$2 million.
And he knows his customer, right? So, like, why,
He can afford it.
probably
Plus,
wasn't a lot of haggling over that.
yeah, throw in a couple subscriptions to Prime, for the next 10, 15, 20 years. Throw it in. Just throw it
Maybe
in.
Bezos promised to keep him out of like the subsequent Diddy documentaries.
There you go. There you go. All right, buddy. Always a pleasure. We'll
All
get
right,
together
Mark.
again tomorrow.
Talk to you tomorrow.
All right. Peace.